In this video, we will be discussing about the coronary circulation. To begin with, let us recapitulate that cardiac output is the amount of blood pumped by the heart per minute, the right ventricle pumping about 5 liters of blood through the pulmonary circulation, and the left ventricle pumping 5 liters of blood through the systemic circulation. Therefore, almost all the blood of the body passes through the heart. But the cardiac muscle cannot extract the oxygen and nutrients from this blood. So, in a way, this blood is useless for the heart. The heart is behaving like a sacrificing saint who believes in giving. It is receiving all the blood and just pushing it forward. It's just doing its work, not keeping anything for itself. Because this blood the heart cannot utilize for having oxygen and nutrients. Why? Why the heart cannot utilize the blood that passes through it? Because number one, the heart muscle wall is too thick to permit the diffusion of oxygen and other supplies from the blood. So the blood cannot go from the chambers to the individual cardiac cells. The ventricular wall is very thick. Secondly, the watertight endothelial lining that does not permit the blood to pass from the chambers into the myocardium. So, like other tissues of the body, the heart must receive blood via some special circulation. So, here it is coronary circulation. Two principal arteries, right coronary artery and left coronary artery. Both arise from the root of ascending aorta. The right coronary artery RCA supplies blood to the mainly to right side, but there is some left portion also. So RCA supplies blood to right atrium, to right ventricle, to the posterior part of the left ventricle and posterior part of interventricular septum. The left coronary artery supplies blood to left atrium, then left ventricle, but the posterior part has already been supplied by RCA. So anterior part of left ventricle. Then which part of interventricular septum? Posterior already covered in RCA territory. So here it is anterior part of interventricular septum and part of left branch of bundle of His. So the venous supply to the heart. Most of the coronary venous blood it returns to the right atrium by coronary sinus. That is the major one. The major drainage is via coronary sinus and anterior cardiac vein. And minor arteriosinusoidal vessels, Thebetian veins, arterioluminal vessels. So that means like all the other venous blood in the parts of the body, this venous blood is also going to the right atrium through some major veins or through minor veins. Now coming to the part that is more important if you consider from a physiologist point of view, characteristic features of coronary circulation. Number one, the blood flow to the heart is 250 ml per minute, 70 to 80 ml per 100 gram tissue per minute. That's about 5% of the cardiac output. And this rate of coronary blood flow, for your information, this is second highest in the body. This rate of coronary blood flow is very high. In fact, it is second highest in the body. And so I want to know which one is the first. The first is renal. We are talking about the rate of coronary blood flow. First is renal, second is coronary. So this is the second highest rate of coronary blood flow, 70 ml per 100 gram tissue per minute. Now coming to the blood flow of the left ventricle, that is twice that of the right ventricle. The left ventricle has such a thick wall, more muscle mass, more work it has to do. It has to push the blood to the systemic circulation, right? So the blood flow is also given more because its demand is more. So we give it, the nature has provided more blood. What about the atria? They're very small. They're just giving blood to the ventricles. So the atrial blood flow is less. It is 1/4 of the ventricular blood flow. We are talking about the coronary circulation. Via coronary circulation, the blood flow to the left ventricle is twice the flow of the right ventricle, and to the atria, less blood comes as compared to the ventricles. Another important point, the heart receives major blood supply during diastole, because when the heart contracts, means when the systole phase is there, the blood vessels are throttled. The blood vessels that are lying inside the muscle mass, they get throttled, they get constricted. There is vasocompression. Because of the vasocompression, they receive less blood flow. So the heart receives less blood flow during systole and major blood flow during diastole. Coronary arteries are end arteries. Now we have two types of end arteries, true end arteries and functional end arteries. So this one is functional end artery. Functional end artery means if you just see, you cannot see any anastomosis or collaterals between the RCA and the LCA, between right coronary artery and the left coronary artery. No major anastomosis or collaterals you can see. But when there will be an arterial occlusion or some patch or some thrombus and the blood flow is being occluded, at that time the small anastomosis will become functional. So there is no anastomosis between the major vessels, but small minor vessels, they do have some collaterals which are beneficial when there is some myocardial ischemia. So coronary arteries are functional end arteries. That is important. Another feature, oxygen consumption. The rate of oxygen consumption, how much oxygen myocardium is using. This rate is highest for the heart. 8 ml per minute per 100 gram tissue, even at rest. That's really awesome. So 70 to 80% of the oxygen is extracted from each unit of the coronary blood. That means what blood is coming to the heart takes about 70 to 80% of the oxygen from that. What happens in the other tissues of the body? When blood comes, it extracts only 25 to 30% of the oxygen and keeps rest as a reserve. When it will require more because of some special situation, then it will take more. In normal resting stage, it takes only 25%. But here, we are talking at the resting stage only. 70 to 80% of oxygen is being extracted. So that means the arteriovenous oxygen difference is high in heart, even at rest. Because you said arterial blood, a lot of oxygen was there. Then venous blood, already 70 to 80% has taken. So venous blood oxygen will be very less. So A minus B, the difference will be high. Cardiac muscle extracts about 80% of oxygen from arterial blood, and that is the reason why AV oxygen difference is high. So it can be asked that way, that why cardiac muscle is able to extract about 80% oxygen from the arterial blood. What happens to the arteriovenous oxygen difference in case of heart? Then what happens when there is increased metabolic demand? For example, in exercise, increased demand is met by almost 100% extraction. 80% was doing in the resting stage only. When there is increased demand during exercise, the myocardium will extract about 100% of the oxygen, but even that is not sufficient. So one more mechanism is there, that there will be increase in the coronary blood flow. The blood flow is also increased. Vasodilatation is there during increased demands. This we'll discuss again. Now the cardiac muscle, it gets 70% of the energy from fatty acids. It gets from carbohydrates, lactate, pyruvate also, but the major one is fatty acids. So that is another special thing. Coming to the phases changes in the coronary blood flow. So is the blood flow in the coronary same during the systole and the diastole? It can't be same, because when the heart contracts, the blood vessels are throttled or constricted, right? So because the blood vessels, they're present inside the muscle mass and they'll get constricted, so blood flow will be less. In fact, during isovolumetric ventricular contraction, blood flow gets to almost nil, and this vasocompression during systole is more marked in the left ventricle, because it has more muscle mass, the pressure generated by left ventricle is more. So vasocompression during systole is more marked in the left ventricle as compared to right ventricle. And what happens to the diastole phase? The cardiac muscle relaxes during diastole, so blood can flow easily. Now just look at this diagram, systole and diastole. During ventricular systole, coronary blood flow in RCA and LCA is less as compared to when in diastole, because in systole the blood vessels are getting compressed. During diastole, when the heart relaxes, the blood vessels are dilated. And the changes are more marked in the left coronary artery as compared to the right, because left has more muscle mass, it has to do more work, there is more contraction of the left side. So during systole and diastole you can see a lot of difference. Aortic pressure, we are comparing the aortic pressure. During the systole phase there is a lot of pressure, intramyocardial pressure is really high. That is why the blood vessels are getting compressed. The deeper blood vessel like subendocardial, they'll be most compressed. And during the diastole phase the intramyocardial pressure is reduced, so there will be more blood flow in LCA and RCA. So whatever changes we are talking about, they are more pronounced in left side of the heart, because left ventricle has more muscle mass, it has to do more work. Now how is the coronary blood flow regulated? There has to be some regulation. Heart should be able to control its blood flow. So one is autoregulation, second is metabolite, then there is nervous regulation also, like in any other case. Autoregulation is present in heart, but it is not that marked as in cerebral. We'll discuss cerebral circulation. There you can see that this plays a lot of role. Coronary circulation shows autoregulation. Okay. What is autoregulation? Auto means self. So heart is able to self-regulate its blood flow. How? By adjusting its vascular resistance. That means by altering its caliber, lumen, the circumference of the vessel, whether to constrict or whether to dilate. So the ability of the heart to adjust its diameter of the vessel and its vascular resistance and maintain a relatively constant blood flow over wide range from 70 to 110 mean arterial pressure. So from 70 to 110, when it is a mean arterial pressure, at that time heart is able to auto-regulate its blood flow. But this auto-regulation has a limitation. It will fail when BP base mean arterial pressure is less than 70. Now what is the importance of metabolites in the heart? They are very important because the metabolites are causing vasodilatation and increasing the coronary blood flow. The most important metabolite, whenever there is increased myocardial oxygen demand, more amount of oxygen is being used, so there will be less oxygen left. So there is hypoxia. Hypoxia will cause release of vasodilatory mechanisms, vasodilatory substances. Most important, adenosine. Other vasodilators, carbon dioxide, hydrogen ion, potassium ion, lactic acid, prostaglandins. Even endothelial cell has certain vasodilator substances. Endothelin derived releasing factor, prostacyclin. So heart has a lot of metabolites that can help in vasodilatation and increasing the coronary blood flow. The most important being adenosine. In fact, we have a hypothesis, Berne's hypothesis, that tells you the role of adenosine in increasing the coronary blood flow. Whenever there is fall in arterial PO2, a stage of hypoxia, or the muscle has used too much oxygen, then also the oxygen is reduced. So there is ischemia or hypoxia of the myocardial cells. Now they are getting less blood supply, less oxygen. So what will happen? The intracellular adenine nucleotide will be converted into adenosine. This adenosine is a vasodilator. So circumference of the vessel will increase and there will be increased coronary blood flow. What about the sympathetic and parasympathetic innervation to the heart? Sympathetic innervation causes coronary vasoconstriction, depends upon which receptor it is acting. On alpha receptor, vasoconstriction. If it acts on beta receptors, it is vasodilatation. Parasympathetic acetylcholine causes vasodilatation acting on the cholinergic receptors. So what will happen if there is a fight between the nervous regulation and the metabolic regulation? Who will win? So whenever the direct effects of nervous stimulation alter the coronary blood flow in the wrong direction, that means maybe you want to increase the blood flow, but there is vasoconstriction because of the release of epinephrine. So who will decide? We cannot leave everything to the autonomic nervous system. The blood flow of the heart cannot be entirely dependent upon autonomic nervous system. It will be a big problem. So the metabolic control will be dominant at that time. Metabolic control means the release of vasodilatory substances and increasing the coronary blood flow that will override the nervous. So if there is a fight between the nervous and the metabolic control will win. Now, how to measure the coronary blood flow? That is again important. So one is the nitrous oxide method, also known as Ketty's method. We already know this because we covered in heart rate cardiac output, the Fick's principle. So you ask the individual to inhale a mixture of 15% nitrous oxide in air for about 10 minutes. Now this mixture of gas has gone into his system. Now you will take samples of blood, serial samples. After every 10 minutes you are taking a blood sample. Arterial sample you will take from peripheral artery, any peripheral artery, maybe brachial, and venous sample you have to take from coronary sinus. We said the major venous drainage of the heart. To the right atrium, the major vein supplying is the coronary sinus. So take the venous sample from there to be more accurate. So the sample is collected at interval of 10 minutes, but again you have to insert a catheter there in the vein, coronary sinus. So that is a procedure that requires a lot of expertise. So blood flow is calculated using the formula CBM is equal to nitrous oxide taken up per minute divided by arteriovenous concentration. We have other method also. We can use radioactive materials like thallium-201. It is injected IV and you place a gamma scintillation camera over the chest of the patient. Now you can imagine, you can see the areas of myocardial ischemia. You can recognize the areas which have less blood flow. How? Because the areas which have less blood will take less of thallium-201. The uptake of thallium-201 will be less there because the blood flow was less. So less thallium went there. So low uptake of thallium in an area means low myocardial blood supply there. So that way you can recognize. Now the proper diagnostic procedure that is used nowadays is coronary angiography. Angio is a blood vessel, graphy you are visualizing. So you want to see the blockage site in the blood vessel. You can combine both the methods, the thallium one that we used, or you can combine the xenon 133 washout with this method, with coronary angiography. Both can be done. So what do you do in coronary angiography? The patient is given a mild sedative to help him relax. Then an area of body, maybe arm or generally groin, in this case it is groin, is cleaned and it is numbed by a local anesthetic. Then you pass a catheter from this groin area up into the heart. Catheter is a thin hollow tube that you are passing. So it will go to the heart. You can take the help of the X-rays to locate properly. Once catheter is placed, then you will inject a contrast material, a dye is injected, and then X-rays can be taken to see how the dye is moving into the heart. So the dye will highlight the blockage areas. This is the picture that you will see. The blood flow to the heart can be seen. This is the contrast material or dye that is injected. So if there is any area, any blockage, so that will be seen here. It will be highlighted. So we can identify where there is a block, in which part, whether it is RCA, LCA, if it is right coronary artery, then whether it is SA nodal or AV nodal, which artery is being affected. If it is left coronary artery, is it left circumflex artery that is blocked or left anterior descending that is blocked? So everything you can